Ability pruning. It's everywhere. We know with the removal of add-ons, Blizzard's trying to simplify rotations and all this things going on, getting rid of many, many stackable abilities that play on each other. They're trying to simplify our rotations so we don't need add-ons to track 36 cooldowns. Now, is this going to work? Well, beta starts tomorrow. So people are going to be testing this stuff out, giving a ton of feedback. And the one thing I will say about Blizzard today versus yesterday is they do respond to feedback at a rapid pace. So they're going to be looking for feedback on this stuff. Let's check this one out right here. The numbers are in. Midnight's ability prune is brutal. Let's check out what Bailey has to say about all these abilities being removed and how your class might be playing in Midnight.
Okay, this video is why our alpha coverage has been a little bit late, because to actually do things right for Midnight, we basically had to look at everything. And one thing is clear, Midnight is not going to be the WoW that we're used to, and Blizzard are on an utter rampage. The overall goal is to make combat more approachable. But what does that mean? Well, it means reducing complexity. It means making gameplay more...
Hold on. I see this one because a lot of people say, no, it's so they can adapt it to be easier to play on console. Look, whatever, console is going to benefit, but I do want to say something about the console push and everything. Don't forget, guys, it's not really WoW's going to Xbox. It's Xbox is coming to WoW. The next 2027 Xbox is going to play like a PC. I highly doubt you're not going to be able to use a keyboard and mouse on that thing. You will be. Now, will this be more controller friendly? Yes, of course. But one thing that it also benefits the game, guys, is it does lower the barrier to entry. Makes the startup easier. Makes rotations easier. Are some rotations right now a little bit, I don't know, complicated to a point where it's not really exciting to track 5 different... I mean, as a Blood DK right now, you got to track really 3 or 4 different resources. Is that really fun? I don't know. I think probably 2 is my max in terms of me tracking personally without having something telling me what to do. Beyond that, it starts to just become overcomplicated. And then you do need add-ons. So... a lot of this pruning, I think, is just going to bring it down, not necessarily in complexity for a single player, but bring it down to a point where the complexity is at your max without requiring an add-on. So I think it'll be fine.
Intuitive, and as a part of that, they're removing a whole ton of buttons, and
Cadence, I didn't say I play my class right. I'm just saying if I wanted to, I'd have to track three or four things. I don't actually do it, though.
mean a ton. The Midnight Prune is real, and we've actually ran the numbers on what everyone started
we got charts.
is going to be left with. So today you'll find out which specs have been hit the hardest, which ones still need a bit of a prune, and whether Blizzard are making the game feel better or a whole lot worse. It's quite huge, but not as insane as you may think, though some of you will definitely log in to find some rather empty-looking action bars, which is rather unlike how you'll feel after pruning your data from where it shouldn't be using Incognito.
What a transition. Look at that.
A sponsor and your easiest way to fight back. You see, whenever data leaks, data brokers harvest it and then they sell it on. So if you've ever wondered how spam callers get your number, it's often stuff like that. And Incognito solves
what a ridiculous comment, Cadence.
the legal work that you would otherwise have to do. And all you've got to do to get started is join at incognito.com/bellularwarcraft. There, you'll get 60% off the annual plan, which is the plan that I use. My own dashboard.
Oh, no.
217 sent, 2 in progress, 2...
Hey, I want to get something straight. King Julian played Hunter originally, okay? He only started playing Blood DK because I inspired him.
Especially when there's quite a lot of hacks, quite a lot of breaches going on, even, for one example, the recent stuff with Discord. And at incognito.com/bellularwarcraft, you get 60% off the annual plan, so check them out using my link today. Alright, how bad is it? Well, you're almost definitely losing some buttons.
Okay.
On average, specs are losing almost 3 things to press.
Okay, total change. Oh, that's not a lot. What, -2, -3? Who's the most? Who's the most on here? We got Elemental Shaman losing 5 ability buttons, and Demon Hunter, Havoc Demon Hunter losing 4 here. I think those are the highest. Oh, we got Survival Hunter losing 5, Frost Mage losing 5, Monk, Brewmaster Monk losing 5. Oh, here's the highest one. What am I saying? There's some 6s on here. So Holy Paladin losing 6, Holy Priest losing 6, so healing. We already knew this. Healers are losing the ability, first of all, to interrupt. That's one right off the bat. Healing is changing. Enhancement Shaman losing 6. So there you go. Those are the big ones. We know healing is getting massive changes. Healing did need changes. Personally, I already thought healing was way too difficult, too much responsibility on healers. That's why we don't have any in the game. So healing did need these changes. We'll see if they went too far or not soon. But I do think those changes are good.
specific, the actual average we calculated is 2.74. Now, look at the whole picture. Of all the specs that we tested, only 5 came out with more or the same number of buttons. The other 34, well, they are losing at least 1 button, and in the most brutal cases, up to 6 buttons.
6 buttons.
You may be wondering who got hit hardest then.
It's like a whole action
it's
bar,
Holy
man.
Paladin, Holy Priest, and Enhancement Shaman. Then, on the other end, both Death Knight DPS specs actually gain a button, as does Fury Warrior.
That's crazy.
But here's the thing. The most common amount of buttons removed is a much more reasonable 2 buttons. Of course, knowing how much you lose is one thing, but...
Okay, can we all agree people are crying now for no reason? I mean, literally, you guys talking to the chat, some of you are freaking out about this before the video. Can we all agree losing 2 abilities is not the fucking end of the world? I think we lost more in the last ability, Prune. What the hell, 2 buttons? I mean, the thing is, too, if you account for the fact that we've added buttons over the last, 2 expansions already, right? They reworked the talent trees. A lot of stuff got changed up. We had the integration of Legion abilities. You guys remember with the Legion legendaries and all, Legion artifact weapons, a lot of that stuff got integrated into our trees. So we have gained abilities. So losing 2 are really even at a net negative at that point. We're probably just going back to what pre-Legion ability trees. I mean, if you think about it, so it's not a big deal. -2, we don't need to cry over it. This is not a, oh my God, they turned me into 3 buttons, Andy, and now I can play it on an Xbox controller. I don't think it's that bad.
Knowing how much you lose is one thing, but we've also got total numbers to compare. Where right now, the average spec in World of Warcraft has 26.92 buttons to press. In Midnight, that drops to a nice round 24.
Again, is that really the end of the world? Did they just simplify? Did they just turn this game into Hello Kitty Island Adventure? No. Come on, you lost 2 buttons in your rotation. I'll tell you right now, for Blood DK, I already know. The ones that we're losing are the stupid-ass ones that literally overlapped on each other so much. It's like it was ridiculous that they even existed in the first place. So we're losing some abilities that just overlap. You don't got to click 2 things now to activate something. You just click 1. It's better.
Smallest amount right now is 22 buttons, and the highest amount is a rather insane 37. That, by the way, belongs to Resto Druid because of their cat form DPS, which isn't a surprise. Druids in general are a little bit bloated because of all their different forms.
Yeah,
but
that makes
they're
sense.
not that much worse than others. Take a look here at Brewmaster Monk. They have 31 buttons, the highest
I agree,
tank in the game.
If we need anything more, we need more pruning. This wasn't enough. I'm only losing 2 abilities. What the hell?
Affliction and Demonology Warlock, they have got 29 each. That is a lot for just doing some DPS. In Midnight, all of these are coming down. As an example, Resto drops to 34, which is still super high. They're definitely an outlier. But Brewmaster, it comes down to 26. Warlocks drop to 25 and 26 respectively, but...
You're telling us for crying, and you cried for a month and a half about Slappy Hands being taken away? I'm still sad about Slappy Hands, man. I like that ability. I really did. That was a great one. Slappy Hands was awesome for tanking. Yeah, I did cry about it. Look, there's some abilities you lose and you miss them. It's true. It's true, but I don't really think any of these are big, oh my God, now, my class is ruined things. There might be some of those, and honestly, people should get feedback on that, because I feel like Blizzard been reacting to it. So you give feedback on some of this stuff. This isn't final. A lot of this stuff's going to change. Beta's literally about to go live, so a lot of this stuff is still in moving parts, right? So give your feedback. All I'm saying is, overall, I don't think that reducing the amount of buttons we have to click is a bad thing. Do I want a single button rotation? No, I'm not going to use the single button rotation because I don't find that to be a fun, intuitive or challenging way to play the game. It's just not fun for me. So I'm still going to do my rotation, but can my rotation be 2 buttons less and I'll still think it's fun? Yes, I do.
It's not just the higher end of things.
But I do want
pruned.
Slappy Hands back.
Take,
I do.
as an
I
example,
miss them,
Fire Mage and Havoc Demon Hunter. They were actually tied for the least number of buttons at 22. But in Midnight, they're actually down to 19 and 18 buttons respectively. So yes, the pruning is absolutely happening, and it's impacting almost everybody. But that's not the full picture, because I've not actually explained what I even mean by button yet. Because it turns out this story goes way beyond those numbers.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued. Let's listen.
My big fear would be losing my core gameplay, and that's where there is some good news. Of course, not every button is a button that you press all of the time. Plus, we're coming into a new expansion, which also means 10 new talent points. And here's why those things matter. You are probably losing more damage buttons than you are utility. So let me explain what all of this data actually is and how we even got the numbers that I've been talking about today. What we did is we built a custom add-on that scrapes Blizzard's spellbook. Yeah, we went that deep for this video. Kind of cracked, but it was pretty fun.
Wow.
Now, obviously, you don't have every spell at once because of your talents. So for every spec, what we did is we grabbed the most popular Mythic Plus build from Archon.gg. You may be wondering why
I grabbed
Mythic
my
Plus?
build for
Well,
Blood
just
DK, of
because
course.
it uses more buttons than raid builds in general, and that's because of utility and AoE. And that means that it's a very good comparison. It kind of hits everything that a spec will do. After doing that, we pulled everything into a spreadsheet and categorized everything into damage, healing, personal, and utility, plus a final non-combat category to mop up things like raid buffs. After doing that, we then created as similar as possible builds on Alpha, and then we did the exact same process across every single spec. And that
Seems
is how I
about
can
right.
tell you this, the important thing. We are losing more actual damage buttons than we are utility buttons. Across the game, we're dropping 1.92 buttons from our rotations, but just under 1 button on average from our utility. So with that in mind, who got hit the worst?
Well, we know healers are losing interrupts, so that's a utility right there.
The answer by the numbers is Frost Mage, Holy Priest, and Holy Paladin. All of them are losing 5 abilities from their core rotations.
Yeah.
But there's a problem with me saying that, because healers have got to both heal and do damage. That naturally means they have a bloated number of buttons and therefore more to prune. So, to get an even more clear picture, we've split the data down by role, and we found out that DPS are the least impacted in their rotations.
Wow.
But with that said, it is still quite uneven, by which I mean some specs are being grossly simplified.
Hold on, what did he say about healers and tanks, though? Because I've been saying for a while, tanking and healing, you got a lot to understand in the game. Like, you're not just understanding your rotation is the most base level thing for a tank and a healer. You got to understand the routes, you got to understand the fights, you got to understand damage output of the enemies properly. If you don't understand any of that, then, interrupts, of course. If you don't get any of that, your group's wiping. Like a DPS dealer could go in and at a baseline, he just understands his rotation. He's his first time in the dungeon, and he could just do fine. If a tank goes in or a healer goes in with just that amount of knowledge, the entire group's going to wipe, right? So there you go. Bye-bye, Bitchicus. At the end of the day, it's just not going to work. That's not going to work. So the thing about going in and making tanking or healing easier, I would expect that to be their number one priority, because there's a lack of those in the game. And it's not because people don't want to tank or heal. It's because the added responsibility on top of the fact that you got to understand maybe a complicated rotation, it's just like something people don't want to undertake. So yeah, this is good. If it's healing and tanking that's being affected the most, that's I think what it should be.
Down by role, and we found out that DPS are the least impacted in their rotations. But with that said, it is still quite uneven, by which I mean some specs are being grossly simplified. Take, for an example, the Fire Mage. The only word here that fits is gutted. It had 9 rotation buttons, which was tied for the minimum with Beast Mastery Hunter and Ret Paladin. Now, it is down to 6, maybe 7 if Meteor gets buffed enough. Phoenix Flame.
So if you're used to eating crayons for breakfast, you can go ahead and play a Fire Mage. There you go. Easiest rotation in the game.
Maybe 7 if Meteor gets buffed enough. Phoenix Flames, deleted entirely.
It's only
Shifting
camp
power,
gone? Oh, no.
Scorch's execute function, well, that has been rolled into Fireball. And what that means is that even if they still have the same gameplay with Fire Blast resets and Pyroclasm, their bars do look embarrassingly empty. Now, for a different story, we can then look at Arms Warrior. It has been carefully pruned. They had the most core buttons at 15. Now they've got a much leaner 12, which still puts them in the top bracket. Here's the thing with that. They're actually not losing much gameplay. Avatar and Thunderous Roar won't really be missed. They were just fire and forget cooldowns, and Blizzard are trying to take some damage out of the cooldowns and put it back into, your regular ability so you don't feel useless outside of popping your coolies. Now, Thunderclap is one that's missing, but that's actually kind of fine because Rend is now AoE by itself. And they're getting lots of other changes as well, but those have...
Wait, are they losing Thunderclap for real? Warriors are losing Thunderclap? That's a pretty big one. That's like on the level of Slappy Hands. That's been around longer than Slappy Hands. But now they're going to give Rens, so holding... that is one thing Blizzard's trying to focus on, I think, for tanking. Holding aggro has become a mini-game within itself. which is a little bit annoying because you can't really match damage output of DPS because they've nerfed tank damage so much. So holding aggro has really become kind of difficult. So yeah, more abilities that help you dot everything would be nice. So I guess that's what Ren's going to be now for warriors.
Nothing really to do with the pruning.
They will
Well,
have
it's
to
fair to
click
say
Ren,
some will
yeah.
miss the fantasy of becoming a big avatar man. The result, though,
It's an
is a
iconic
far
move.
more
I know.
lean-
That's shocking if they're really getting rid of Thunderclap. I mean, probably Tauren will still have Thunder Stomp, right? That's a racial for them. But not seeing Thunderclap in the game anymore, that's kind of weird.
and sensible arms warrior. But that's not all we found, because some specs will look almost identical. Windwalker, as an example, loses one defensive in the form of diffuse magic, and Storm, Earth, and Fire is being replaced by Weapons of Order, so their gameplay is largely unchanged. Most specs, though, fall somewhere around the middle. As an example, Marksmanship Hunter only loses Explosive Shot from its rotation. Beast Mastery loses Call of the Wild, and Bloodshed is getting rolled into Bestial Wrath. Sub-Rogues lose their Flagellation because Blizzard decided ultimately playing WoW is Flagellation enough, and Cold Blood is no longer inactive. It's now
Flagellation? What the fuck was Subtitlely doing? What?
going to be a passive.
What is that
so
ability?
what you see here is overall a Blizzard that's being quite careful when it comes to pruning rotations. They've essentially solved problems without causing that much harm, which certainly is good, and in our upcoming class change videos, you will see that designers have solved way more problems than they have created. Now, the next topic today will be healers, because they really have had the biggest changes, but there's one or two things to talk about first, because I've got two very important examples. First, Assassination.
Oh, Flagellation. Okay, I put a T in there. I turned it into a different word. All right, I got it.
Rogue. It's an example of a spec that's been surgically simplified, where they actually didn't lose any buttons overall. But Shiv is changing category. Right now, Shiv opens a bonus damage window for your Envenoms, but in Midnight, it just goes back to being the utility poison button. And that basically makes their cooldown windows less punishing, and it just lightens the rotation a little bit. Now, our other example is a bit weirder. It's Frost Mage with its massive rework, where in total, it's got 5 fewer damage buttons than in Midnight. As an example,
Rip Mountain Thane. What's gonna? I don't know. Isn't Mountain Thane based around Thunderclap? You're right. What the hell? What's gonna happen with that? That's a weird one. I hope they allow glyphs for changing ability appearances. Look, they mentioned glyphs briefly. I've been a big time glyph Andy for a long time. I've always said the glyph system underutilized. It was such a fun thing to use. And I think they should get back into using glyphs. Very, very at a small point, Ian mentioned it in an interview that they were looking at the glyph system again. I hope they are. And I hope they bring the glyph system back, because I know hero talents were supposed to be kind of the way that you change your abilities and what they look like. But the glyph system was a more fun way of doing it, because it didn't actually change anything about your ability other than its appearance. Turning somebody into a penguin instead of a sheep, like that kind of stuff was fun. I think glyphs should have been the thing they iterated on more than hero talents, but we got both now. I just hope they don't abandon glyphs.
Icy Veins is gone entirely. Ice Nova now replaces Cone of Cold. You can't have both. And thanks to changes made to Shatter, Frost Nova
an interesting
doesn't give
cast.
bonus damage anymore. It's purely just crowd control. Shifting Power is also gone for them, like it is for all the mages, but Ray of Frost has now came in as their major cooldown, their mandatory one, the one that kind of defines more the look and feel of their spec. But that's not the crazy part. Here's the crazy part. Glacial Spike and Comet Storm are staying, but not as their own buttons.
Is she shooting the ice bolts out of her cooch? This animation's very interesting. Yeah, clearly it's broken. He's playing on like alpha servers or something.
Instead, Frostbolt and Blizzard will change into those buttons under certain conditions, which basically means you get to use those cool spells, but without having loads of button bloat that will make your key binding harder. I just think those are great examples of this stuff being done right, and I'd say that all in all, for us DPS players, Blizzard's actually done a great job with the pruning thus far.
All right.
I mean, where specs could have lost buttons that they would have wanted to keep, we instead are seeing those abilities get consolidated, like what we just covered with Frostmage, but also with Paladin. As an example, Hammer of Wrath.
Right, I do want to kind of say that like a lot of people, you guys mentioned Slappy Hands, that I was sad to lose it. Blizzard's not really taking away abilities here in this pruning. They're like combining them. So it would be like it would be as if I didn't lose Slappy Hands, but instead it got incorporated into Taunt or something. That would be weird. But I'm just saying, like, that's what they've been doing. Like, Explosive Shot Hunters are losing it, but they're only losing it as a single button cast. Explosive Shot's now being tied into another shot. So they're together now. That's what's really going on here. So a lot of us really aren't losing abilities. We're just losing buttons to click, which I think is a good thing.
Now replaces Judgment during Avenging Wrath. That's one less button and no real loss.
Thunderclap has not been removed from the talent tree. He doesn't know what he's talking about. The abilities on the second row basic talent tree. Okay, I'm sure there's something behind Thunderclap. Maybe something got combined into it and he said it the wrong way. I don't know. But okay, good. Yeah, because Thunderclap being gone was going to be weird. That's a core ability to Warriors for me. I don't play Warrior, but when I think Warrior, I think of two things: Charge and Thunderclap. Those are my Warrior abilities in my head.
Now, we will do deep dives into
Thunderclap is a proc
in the upcoming winners and losers video, because for now, I have something far more important to talk about.
Okay, so there are changes to it.
And that is, maybe the real winners of pruning, maybe not, healers.
Healer's a big change.
Healers have got the most buttons. It's been that way for a long ass time. They've got damage and healing in the rotations, and in our numbers, they're averaging 19 things to press. When you add utility, that goes up to 29.
Heroic Leap's great, but Heroic Leap was added in the game later on. Charge was the OG. The OG. I don't think Heroic Leap was an ability that the game could have handled back then in vanilla.
Now in Midnight, they're losing 4 buttons on average, 3 of them being healing or damage. So let's take a look then at the best example, which I think is the Holy Priest, which was an utter nightmare, because to heal and do damage you needed 19 buttons. They had so many different things. Now it's just 14. Power Word, Shield, Renew, Heal, and the Oracle skill are all gone. Shadow Word Pain is gone as well. Those, of course, were completely extra buttons that weren't the core of what you were doing as Holy, so they were just sort of in there feeling miserable, but technically still part of your kit. But you're not really losing here, because all of their effects are basically now baked-in passives. That will just make it easier to pick the right button for the right situation. You know, signal-to-noise ratio in your kit. Kind of an important thing.
Yeah.
Now, another one that's been kind of saved is the Holy Paladins. And man, I know you guys have been suffering for a while. What we've seen with them is mostly pruning from damage, overlap, and niche spells. So, Crusader Strike, gone. No more Crusades for you. Hammer of Wrath and Consecration are now just both part of Judgment. Holy Prism is now a choice against Divine Toll. Blessing of Seasons has been sent back to the Shadowlands from whence it came. What we see, though, is that with power shifting back into your baseline healing, you can essentially do better with fewer buttons. I mean, so many of the old healer abilities were just noise. Now, it's just a lot easier to know what spells actually matter.
That's good.
And that's true for everybody.
I don't see this as a bad thing.
The Resto Shaman.
Ooh.
Where, whoops. Bit of a problem here. They're losing tons of gameplay. Cloudburst, gone. Healing Tide, gone. Healing Surge, gone. It's kind of wild. And initially,
what are they going to heal with now?
Life was also gone, but Blizzard have actually given that back to you guys following some alpha feedback.
See, exactly. Alpha. Just imagine, this is alpha feedback, which, mind you, is like only the people who know somebody at Blizzard got this shit, or like the biggest streamers or whatever. Your boy, he got offered it, but he denied it because if I don't see the people getting access, I don't want access, right? I'm a man of the people. I want to go with the people at the end of the day. So I told Blizzard I don't want alpha access. But and then I woke up from my dream. But here's the thing: the beta is going to open this up to so many more people. So many more people. Like, just imagine the amount of feedback we're going to be able to give them now. So when these changes, right, you see shamans coming out saying, Blizzard, you fucked it, we need this ability back. They gave it back. So I totally think, like, don't panic yet. If there's an ability that you previously liked that, now you're wondering why it's gone, you think it kind of ruins the class, other people probably feel the same way. And that ability could come back. So I think we're going to see a lot of changes here going forward as beta opens up tomorrow.
And they did that basically so you'd have more to do than just spamming Chain Heal and Healing Wave. It's a bit weird. It is the one heal.
Shut the fuck up, Sam. Nobody at Blizzard's ever heard your name. That's a lie. That's a lie, because I could show you right now, the creator of Pepe follows me on Twitter. That's right, you know Pepe, the fucking demon lord? When I came out with my video about the theory of how Pepe is actually the leader of all Dreadlords, he saw the video and he followed me. So there you go. That's a lie. Cap that shit.
That's basically lost the sauce that's made it fun.
He works on Blizzard's art team.
That does blow, and I think Blizzard need to take a more serious look at Resto Shaman. Tanks, then, are a bit less interesting to talk about, but it is good news, where pruning has of course led to fewer buttons, especially with Brewmaster. And the simple TLDR of it all is that nothing's really been lost. On average, tanks are losing about 2 buttons, but most of those losses are getting moved into passive effects or are being replaced with reworks. Up to now, we've been talking about the core gameplay.
Who is the most complicated 26 for warrior, 28 for druid is just overcomplicated because they hold a lot of core abilities on top of their transitions. So yeah, interesting. And we're losing 2 as blood decays.
Up to now, we've been talking about the core gameplay, and that is where most of the changes happened. And most of that change is positive. And I mean it when I say it that this is impressive. It's hard to make this amount of change on such a big game so quickly, but they've mostly managed to scalpel out the bloat, but take very little of the meat with it. The same should mostly go for utility, but I do have to say mostly because there are some victims.
Interrupts for healers?
On utility, we first got to remember that it's a new expansion, we're getting more levels, and that means we get 10 extra talent points. 3 of those will go into your class tree, and at level 90, that means you'll basically be able to pick all the utility that you want. And that means that most specs should actually have more options in Midnight. But the pruning mostly counteracts that. I say mostly because many specs can now pick up things that they couldn't before. As an example, Death Knights with Wraith Walk, Warriors with Intimidating Shout, because those were abilities that were hard to fit in before.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of utility kind of disappearing forever, where only Elemental Shamans get Thunderstorm now. And they've all lost Stone Bulwark. Hunters are losing Bursting Shot and Implosive Trap. Monks only have a passive version of Diffuse Magic, and every healer except Shaman, well, they're losing their interrupts, which has been extremely controversial, to say the least. Covering the other roles, though, in some cases Blizzard have tried to save abilities via consolidation. As an example, Havoc has now got their Netherwalk immunity as a part of Blur. Rat Paladins have got Shield of Vengeance included in Divine Protection, and Warlocks can still heal their pets, but Drain Life does that instead of Health Funnel.
There you go.
So, pretty smart consolidation, the kind of thing that just
that makes sense.
To work. But there was one class that's been completely demolished. And if you main this class, sit down and get ready. If you're a mage, you may feel kind of ruined. Mass Barrier is gone. Tons of your crowd control are now choice nodes. That reduces your options. Shimmer is at its cooldown, increased massively. Blink's second charge is now your class tree capstone. Now, displacement is still there.
Oh, that sounds
but
gross.
It's a choice against that capstone, so you can't have both, and it works as a blink double tap instead of its own button. Honestly, for them, it's brutal, and they've probably went too far. But by now in the video, you've got a fair idea of what's going on.
I will say, the blink double tap instead of its own button, that does seem like a controller move, doesn't it, guys? That definitely, I would, like, if you're going for a double tap instead of a separate button for that ability, that sounds like, okay, you want this to play right on an Xbox controller, if I'm being honest. And I'm trying to be honest. Like, I'll call it when I see it. Yeah, that does sound like a controller play.
So let's bring this into the big question, which is, but is any of this any good?
But to be fair, we all know that most mage players lick paint for a living. So, and they prefer the lead version of paint. So their 3-button rotation ain't nothing new, let's be honest.
Did Blizzard make the game feel better, or did they make the game feel worse? Well, based on our time on the alpha, they have mostly made the game better. This has been a positive change.
Done.
Even removing a few abilities has made most DPS substantially easier to keybind and to understand. That'll probably be good for a lot of players, and these changes have actually been backed up by changes made in the dungeons, where cast times are longer. There's a better signal-to-noise ratio.
Okay, I did used to play mage. This is true. That was my past class because I was learning the game, so I picked a class that I could learn the game with. I know, yes, I did play mage back in the day. I also played Huntard for a long time, which is also another class that probably, drinks windshield wiper fluid for a living. But I manned up, right? I wisened up, and I learned how to play Blood DK, and that's my main. It's been my main for a long time. But all jokes aside, yes, to the other comment, this is only this is alpha stuff. A lot of this will probably change. I'm guessing mages will get more abilities back, or in their rotation will become a little bit more intricate. Because, yeah, probably right now it's not in the best spot. But again, feedback is coming and changes are coming.
This is clearly Blizzard designing a new era of World of Warcraft that's not going to be rooted in add-ons and that sort of thing. Now, healers should benefit massively from less bloat, in theory. Overall, then, designers have done a great job here. Classes are still fun to play, and importantly, they're fun to get good at. But there's a small caveat, and it's that I hope they don't go any further here. Take, say, Frostmage, it's the most recently reworked one. What they've done with Frostbolt and Glacial Spike is elegant. I think for most players it'll be fun, but for some, it may be a bit frustrating. And another thing lost is part of the fun of having a new ability, the physical sensation of hitting a
There's like a humming in the background that just started from this video. I thought it was my house or something, yeah.
different button. When your bars look empty and you're pressing the same 3 to 4 buttons over and over again, then the rest of the game does need to be more exciting to make up for that. And of course, it's Blizzard's dungeon, raid, and encounter design that will be the proof of that. Anyway, this was a fun way to look into button counts, but there's another count that's kind of important. It's the subscriber count of World of Warcraft. We may have just found out what it is. It turns out, per something that Blizzard officially put out themselves, that WoW might be bigger than even the pre-Cataclysm peak. But I know one thing for sure, it doesn't feel like that. And in this video, we'll explain why.
There you go. Great video. Thank you, Burning Viking, man. Hello, Baldicus. Thank you for the 100 bits, man. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you, thank you. Look, nice video for Bellular. I think what we could take away from this is 2 things. Maybe 3. Number 1, yeah, all the abilities are getting cut, but it's not as dramatic as people think. 2 to 3 abilities per person. That's really not that big of a deal. I think people have been a lot more dramatic about this than they needed to be. And then 2, overall, at least Bellular thinks, and just by me like visually seeing a lot of these things, I think so too. A lot of these changes seem to be good. Seem to be like things moved in the right direction, so that's a good thing. The final takeaway is we are just now entering beta. We've already seen an alpha, Blizzard reacting to the feedback quite quickly. I think it's going to continue in beta. We'll see the classes play pretty good in Midnight, hopefully.